Hi, so I wanted to go ahead and introduce Chapter 19 like I said I would, so that we all have some basis for whenever we get into the difficult parts of Chapter 19 next week in class. So to start off, we'll just introduce the cardiovascular system. It's essential for life. If the cardiovascular system dies or fails, we die. It is necessary for homeostasis. It's constantly circulating fluids and nutrients and carrying out wastes, so it's a very important system. Uh, any disease that affects the heart or the blood vessels is a cardiovascular disease. And so there's many different types of diseases, and it's in America, it's the leading cause of death. I'm pretty sure it's the leading cause of death worldwide. Um, just because if any problem happens with our heart or cardiovascular system, everything else kind of starts failing afterwards. It's very necessary. So these are the learning objectives. I'll go ahead and let y'all read through these. So the introduction is that the cardiovascular system is responsible for transporting blood. This allows exchange between the capillaries and or between our blood and the cells at the levels of the capillaries. So in our lungs, there's capillaries that line them. In every tissue of every system of our body, we've got capillaries to allow for nutrients to exchange back and forth. The term we use to describe is perfusion, and this is the delivery of blood per time per gram of tissue. And so this is the units there for perfusion. Adequate perfusion means that we are supplying sufficient blood to maintain the health of those cells. If it's inadequate perfusion, those cells are not receiving the proper amounts of blood. And in order to maintain this, we have to have continuous, constant pumping of blood through our heart and blood vessels. If our system fails, so if our heart doesn't pump blood, if one of our vessels gets blocked, then perfusion is inadequate. There can be accumulation of waste products, deprivation of nutrients, and that leads to cell death. The blood vessels themselves are these soft pipes that run throughout our body. We've got arteries that carry blood away from the heart, and we've got veins that carry blood to the heart. One thing that's important to note is that it says that most but not all arteries are with oxygenated blood. This means that some of our or most of our arteries carry it. Those are the arteries that are delivering to our body. But the arteries that deliver blood to our lungs do not carry oxygenated blood. They carry deoxygenated blood because it needs to go to the lungs to get oxygenated. So the same thing with veins that are returning back to the heart. Most are deoxygenated because they're coming from organs or tissues that are going to come back up to the heart so that way they can get redistributed to the lungs to receive oxygen and go back out. So the veins that are coming back from the lungs, however, are oxygenated because they have just come from sites of very high oxygen levels. Capillaries are the individual tiny sites of exchange, and so you can see down here there's an image of some capillaries, how they're very small. It allows red blood cells to pass through in single file line, and this allows exchange directly with the cells of each tissue. In the middle of all of this is our heart. And so our heart rests right here. It's a hollow four-chambered organ and it's got two pumps, a right side and a left side, and each of these are going to be pumping blood. The right side pumps blood to our lungs. The left side pumps blood to our body. Each side, the left and the right, have a top and a bottom. And so the top sides are the right atrium and the left atrium. These are the top. So this is where blood enters to the heart. It then goes into the ventricle, which is the lower portion. It's this more muscular, larger portion. So we have the right ventricle and the left ventricle, sorry. Each ventricle receives blood from an atria, and everything stays within one of the sides. So if it's in the right side, right atrium goes to right ventricle, and if it's in the left side, left atrium goes to left ventricle. There is no mixing of blood between the ventricles or between the atria except in fetus or developing fetus. And we'll talk about that whenever we go over human development. So we've got some large vessels, the great vessels. They're fantastic. They are continuous with each chamber and they transport blood directly to and from the chambers. And so we can see those right through here. Out the top of our right ventricle, we've got our pulmonary trunk. It's pulmonary, it's got the root word pulmones. If you speak Spanish, it helps a little bit for some of these words with Latin roots. This goes to our lungs, and then it's going to branch off right and left to go to each sides. The left ventricle leaves and goes out the aorta, and the aorta is what delivers blood to the rest of the body. Entering into the blood on the right side, we have the superior vena cava from above and the inferior vena cava from below. And on the left side, we'll have our pulmonary veins coming in from right and left, and they will enter into our left atrium. And they will then be able to pass down into the left ventricle to go out the aorta. A lot of times we're going to use the word drains. So veins drain certain tissues, whereas arteries deliver. So if I say drains, that means it's in a vein. So within each or between each side, we've got a set of valves. So there's a valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle, the left atrium and the left ventricle, and between the ventricles and the arteries there is another set of valves. So the one that leads to the pulmonary trunk is the pulmonary valve, and the one that leads to the aorta is the aortic valve. The valves between the atrium and ventricles, we call those atrioventricular valves. Our right one is our tricuspid, and our left one is our bicuspid valve. So now we're going to get to go into the circuits of the blood. And so it's important to understand that there are two separate circuits, and our blood kind of runs in a figure eight or an infinity symbol, for example. So it's constantly in motion. It goes from one thing to the other thing. The first circuit is our pulmonary circuit, and this is going to deliver blood to the lungs. This is going to be deoxygenated blood. It's going to the lungs to get reoxygenated. The systemic circuit then takes this oxygenated blood from our lungs and through our left side of our heart and delivers it back to the body. And so this is how we can get blood to all the rest of our systems. Here we can see an image of this. And so here is the pulmonary circuit going to our lungs. So it starts here with our pulmonary trunk coming out of our right ventricle, goes left and right to go to our lungs. And we'll have capillaries right here that are then going to oxygenate the blood, and then it's going to return from veins to the left atrium and go into the left ventricle, and then out the aorta through the systemic circuit. So here's our systemic circuit. It goes to the capillaries where it does the opposite it did at the lungs. It's going to deliver oxygen, and then it's going to drain up here into the right atrium. And then it's going to go into the right ventricle, and it will repeat this process over and over again. Here is a basic pattern that you can see, and so this helps summarize it, and y'all can go through that. So we need to talk about circulation rates. And so blood is constantly being pumped, and it's pumped pretty quickly. Our right and left sides of our heart pump equal amounts of blood. And so this maintains constant pressure within our body. If there's unequal pumping, then that means we might end up start accumulating fluids or tissues, or I mean fluids within our tissues, sorry. So the spaces where the blood is delivering nutrients can accumulate fluids if it's not being left or drained at the same rate it's being filled. And so hopefully that makes sense. That's why the right and left sides have to go equally, because they are draining as well as filling tissues or spaces. Here's an image where we can see this, and it talks about our pulmonary circulation and how it leaves our heart. And so you can follow these numbers through from our right atrium to the ventricle, out our pulmonary trunk to our pulmonary arteries, to our capillaries, and then back through our pulmonary veins to our left atrium. So you can follow this flow chart. It's pretty straightforward. This is another one. So the previous one was pulmonary. This one's systemic. And so you can follow the same thing but go through the systemic branch. So the systemic branch is going to start in the left atrium where it goes into the left ventricle and then out the aorta to the rest of the body and the capillaries. And then it's going to come back through the vena cava and return to the right atrium where it's going to start the pulmonary circuit. So edema, I mentioned the term edema. What edema is it's swelling. And this means that there's an accumulation of fluids. So whenever our blood is delivering to the capillaries, it's under high pressure. This is going to force fluid out of the cardiovascular system into the tissues. And so if it's a systemic edema, These tissues in our systems, like in our arms, for example, will inflate. And this would occur if our right ventricle is being impaired. Our right ventricle, remember, takes blood out of our systemic circuit and delivers it to our pulmonary circuit. So if the right ventricle is not pumping blood out as quick as it's receiving, we can have an accumulation of fluid in the tissues. The opposite if we have a pulmonary edema. This is whenever our left ventricle is not pumping properly. So if it's not pumping fast enough or hard enough, then the fluid is not going to be drained from the lungs as quickly as it's sent to the lungs. And so this has fluid accumulation in the lungs themselves. This is obviously very bad because you can have impaired gas exchange, and so you can kind of suffocate yourself that way.